Hello, in this video we're going to discuss WatchGuard threat detection and response exclusion lists and signature overrides. We'll talk about the purpose of each one, how to add, edit, or remove exclusions, the syntax needed for exclusion lists, and how to add and remove signature overrides. So the first thing we need to talk about is what the difference between an exclusion and a signature override really is. An exclusion defines a path, file, or process to be ignored by TDR. They're not monitored at all or scored. So since we ignore them, you want to limit exclusions wherever possible. Signature overrides, on the other hand, are individual single files that are known to be good or known to be bad, and they're scored appropriately. So a few points on exclusion syntax. When you're defining a folder or directory path that you want to exclude, and you want to exclude the subfolders beneath that path, you must include a trailing slash. It's a good idea to leave that on there anyway. You can select files, processes that are launched out of that directory, or both. When in doubt, you can use both. Although TDR does accept environment variables like %program files % or %user %, we prefer to use a wildcard because variables can be changed based on the user that's logging in or various programs that are running, including malware. Using the wildcard character will match any value put in the path, so if the variable changes, your exclusion will still work. Signature overrides, on the other hand, are defined by an MD5 hash rather than a file name, and the file is scored and monitored. You can add it to a whitelist or a threat list. The downside of this is that every time that file changes due to updates or modification, you have to update the MD5 hash. Okay, so when to use exclusions? If you have a known good file or path that you want to ensure is not being touched by TDR in any way, you can add an exclusion. Another example might be if you have third-party software that seems to be malfunctioning or performing slowly due to TDR interaction. For example, a PDF creator that isn't able to output because of a temporary file creation. Often, we recommend that you put exclusions in for your antivirus products to avoid what is called double scanning of directories. Since antivirus and TDR are very similar, they'll tend to operate on the same files. So to avoid any negative interactions, you want to exclude TDR from your AV and vice versa. So when not to use exclusions would be if you're not absolutely sure that the path you're excluding is safe. And you want to avoid using exclusions for common malware dump locations like the desktop, documents, temporary folders, app data, things like that. For signature overrides, on the other hand, you can whitelist them or threat list them directly from an indicator that you've seen on the indicators page, or add the MD5 manually to the signature override list. For example, if you have a one-time installer file or a custom-built static application that doesn't change very often, or if you just want to test your policies, you can create a signature override and trigger indicators. When you don't want to use them is if you have frequently changing files, or if you're not sure if something is good or bad. And in general, if you're trying to add signature overrides for multiple files in the same path, you might want to just look at an exclusion. Okay, now that we've seen the basics, let's go ahead and add an exclusion. I've logged into my TDR instance as an operator user, and I'm going to go to Configuration, Exclusion. This is a completely new system, so there's nothing in here. I'm going to say Add an Exclusion, and I want to add an exclusion for my AV product. I'm going to say C program files my AV. Notice I put a trailing slash on the end of this. If I remove that slash, also exclude subfolders is grayed out. That means any folder or file that's under the C program files my AV folder will still be scanned unless I add that slash. I'm going to exclude files and processes, and I'll just add a description. When you're creating exclusions, you can target hosts or groups. I can put an individual host name in here, but this is on all of my machines, so I'm going to say all and select the all host group. Save and close. I've got my program files, but I also happen to know that my AV vendor gives me updates in a second directory. So I want to make sure my updates aren't affected either, and I'm going to add C program data my AV, give it description, and have this apply to all hosts. So now I'll make sure that my AV product doesn't have TDR scanning it, and I'm going to go into my AV console and add TDR as well, so that the AV doesn't try to scan TDR. Now I also have some SQL servers in my environment. So I want to add an exclusion, say C program files MySQL to protect the actual executable. And I want to add that to my SQL servers group. Save and close. Now I also want to make sure that for performance reasons, I don't have TDR attempting to scan my databases folder, but I don't have any processes that launch out of there, so I'm just going to say files only. Add a description here. And again, this only applies to my SQL servers group. And these are groups that I created earlier. And there we go. Now I have my AV excluded for all hosts, and I have my SQL databases and program files excluded for my SQL servers group. If I want to remove these exclusions, I just click on the gear icon and say remove exclusion. All right, now that my exclusions are done, I want to create a signature override. So I go to configuration signature overrides, and again, this is blank because it's a new system. And I'm going to say add signature override. And here you put the MD5 hash of a specific file. This can be a little tricky for some Windows users since there aren't any good MD5 sum tools built into Windows. You can use a Linux utility, or there's a variety of freeware out there that will produce an MD5 hash for you. And this happens to be notepad.exe. And I'm going to apply this just to my laptop users because I don't like them using Notepad for some reason. Save and close. And now it adds to the threat list by default. But wait, I've made a mistake. I actually want to whitelist it because I do need them using Notepad. And there, just like that, I can whitelist it. And to remove that, remove signature overrides. I hope this video has been helpful for you. We've reviewed exclusion list and signature overrides. If you need further assistance, please visit us at watchguard.com. Thank you.